zaka je, duk inda zaka tafi, yana da kyau ya kasance cewa mutum yana da wannan sanayyar cewa wata rana zai dawo gida. Saka inda zaka tafi, me zan karanta yanda idan bukata ta kama na dawo gida ba zan dawo in zamo stranded ba. Sannan kuma idan na je na yi deciding ga abin da nake son in karanta inda za ni, how do I navigate yanda zan achieve maximum success din? I'm going to respect time, so I have just 1 minute more. It's not about only coming to the UK to get a passport. It's not about coming to the UK just to get training or making some money. Obviously, idan mutum yana son ya making real money, possibly you can make much more money at home, back home, than in the UK. So it is about being better skilled doctors that one day we can go back home, do things, help our society, help our communities. It's going to pain you idan ka samu dan uwanka baya da lafiya, mahaifinka baya da lafiya, mahaifiyarka baya da lafiya, and then it's stranded and rasa yanda za a yi. Somebody has to go home and do this. But lokaci yayi, an daidai zan tsaya ina roƙo Allah subhanahu wataala ya sa albarka cikin abin da za a yi. In an yi kuskure, Allah ya yafe mana kuma ya taimaka kuma ya bada sa baki daya. Jazakumullahu khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa tafaddal.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, big brother and a mentor to all of us, Dr. Noura. He has been very supportive of all of us and has been a guide for us throughout the journey to both get registered and work in the UK. I'm briefly going to pass a few messages before we dive right into the heart of the meeting. There are a few important things that we should know. This is a platform for extending information, which is one of the valuable things when it comes to journey to any other country, not just the UK, but anywhere you want to practice in the world as a medical doctor. You need a guide and you need information. And we have set up presenters. A lot of them are familiar faces to a lot of us, and they would be going through the slides and sharing their message. If you have any question, you can post the questions in the chat box and we would have a look at it. And hopefully during the question and answer section, we would be able to respond to all your questions. And in the event that we're not able to respond or give an appropriate answer, hopefully we'll leave our emails along so that you can always reach out to us and ask as much questions as you want to. We would still urge all the attendees to try as much as possible to mute their mic so that we don't get interference as the presenters are speaking to us. And kamar da Dr. Noura ya faɗa, za mu dinga Hausa da Turanci insha Allah a ciki domin mu yaɗa bi ma'ana mu nuna cewa ga asalinmu ga daga inda muke. Ba tare da ɗaukar lokaci mai tsawo ba, zan ba wa Dr. Mustapha dama idan ya shirya yanzu zai fara presentation na bangaren sa insha Allah. Dr. Mustapha, if you're ready, I would be sharing your screen from my mobile device and then you can start your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Alhassan.
Yeah, you can start speaking while I get the slide ready.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Noura, for the precise and elaborate introduction regarding our presentation today. I believe everyone can hear me from wherever you are. And I will be starting the presentation today. My name is Mustapha Muhammad Aliyu. I'm an alumni of Bayero University, Kano, graduated 2017. I'll be taking you through English exams and Plab 1 as a whole throughout your Plab journey coming to the UK. First of all, this is my introduction. We have to look at exam choices. Talking about exam choices, I mean the English exams which you need to take and the Plab exam proper. Starting with the English exams, which I'll give you time to go through the introduction. We have the exam choices, booking an English test, English exam tips and advices, Plab 1, booking the Plab 1 exams, preparation, study materials, Plab 1 tips and advices. Without much ado, the exam choices. Before the presentation today, quite a lot of colleagues sent in questions asking what is the best modality or which exam is the best exam to take for your English preparation when working towards your Plab journey. It is a matter of choice. Before it used to be just one exams when we have just the IELTS exams which you can take. But as time goes, there have been a couple of exams that were introduced, which was now reduced to two, basically, which is the International English Language Testing System, which is the IELTS, and the Occupational English Test, which is the OET. The good thing about this test is when to take them. Which are you supposed to take? I got a question today, which was sent in by one of the organizers of this program regarding one of our colleagues asking which is the best to take. Is it IELTS academic or general training? So for the IELTS exams, you need to take the academic training, which is the recommended exams you need to take if you need to take the Plab pathway. If you're going into other pathway that is not Plab related, then you can do the general training. But for us in this discussion, the recommended exam is the IELTS academic exams. Then the occupational English test, which was recently introduced in the last 3-4 years in Nigeria. We now take the OET exams with different centers in the country. Notably, one is in Lagos, while the IELTS have several centers across the nations where you can take the exams. Next slide, please. Then booking an English test and requirements. I had to make this slide this way in order to enable me walk you through what you're required to book an English test and what you need to do if you're required to do a Plab exams. The English test is the fundamental, I would say it is the most important tool you need for you to go through this Plab journey, because it is, in quote, the rate limiting step that determines if you're actually going to proceed with your Plab journey or not. Because it is the most frustrating, as frustrating as it could be, it is also the most fundamental. So taking it very serious tells how well or how smooth your Plab journey is going to be. A lot of us went into the English test taking with what is called the trial and error method, not having mentors to tell us what we need to do and what not we need to do. And amounting to the fact that we had to take the test several times before finding what it actually means to write the English exams. But alhamdulillah, now we have people who actually mentor a lot of people on how to go about with these exams and make things really, really easy, which is what we are trying to do here tonight. I know the time is very short for me to cover everything, take you through all what you need to do. Like Dr. Alhassan rightly said, we're going to drop our emails and you can actually send questions to us if you have or you need clarifications regarding how to go about this test. The next agenda on my slide is booking the IELTS test. Booking the IELTS test is very easy. What do you need to book a test? All you need is a legal means of identification, be it a driver's license, an international passport, a national identification number. All this is what you need to book an IELTS English test. And when is the best time to book a test? The best time to book a test is as soon as you have made the decision that you want to pursue your medical practice outside Nigeria. You can write this English test when you're still an undergraduate student, be it level 400, 500, or 600, because it prepares you and gives you the avenue to push forward and when you need to start your journey. And it gives you ample lot of time to actually go through your ifs and don'ts if you need money, finances, and all that to pursue your processes. Then the English test centers near you, I would go straight to that. For the IELTS, for those who are in Kano, You can take both the British Council organized IELTS test in Kano and the Australian one, which is called the Mod IDP test, which you can write in Kano. You can do it in Abuja. It can be written in Port Harcourt. It can be written in Ibadan. It can be written in Lagos and so many other centers. But for the OET test, I believe it's still written just in Lagos because the only center you have is in Lagos. Regarding how much the exam costs, I think the IELTS exam costs roughly around 70 to 90,000 naira, while the OET test costs roughly with your transport and every other thing, putting logistic into account, it will cost you around 300,000 naira. But a lot of people have said passing the IELTS is much difficult than passing the OET. The choice is what you need to work on, what you need to do, and how you need to go about it. Then the English exam tips and advices, not to even waste much time. Myself personally, I took IELTS and I had to take the exam 3 times. You can imagine. Because the first one, a friend told me about the exams. I knew nothing about it. I believe I am a good speaker of English. I went straight up, booked the exams, and took it. And it was simply not what I was expecting. It was quite different. The IELTS is not just an English exams, but it is an exam to test your IQ and your grammatical function, how well you are familiar with grammar and the English language. So, what study materials do you need to book the IELTS test? First of all, I would recommend we go with we have a lot of guys have asked me about the Barron's textbook. I would advise you to shy away from it because it is a very bulky book which has over 500 pages, and it is not the best book you would want to write an English test. But my recommendation would be, first of all, get books like IELTS Made Easy 1 and 2, which I am going to share with you after this presentation. That is one. It is for the essay writing in IELTS. That's one. Number two, we have the book called the Ryan Band 9 Essay, which comprises different type of essays you would encounter during your practice of IELTS, which is also a very good book. Number three is to familiarize yourself with different questions in IELTS, which I believe we have notable and recommended tutors who actually have credits and have over 30 years of experience in tutoring students regarding IELTS, which most of you must have heard about Liz and Jay, which I would recommend we get Liz and Jay on YouTube. You can watch the videos after going through what you need to know about IELTS, and those are the recommendations I would give for now, and writing a lot of essays. The materials I will drop after this presentation. Then for the OET, there have been several links regarding practicing for OET and studying for OET. It is straightforward. The advantage of the OET over the IELTS is it is an exam which is more towards medical or clinical scenarios rather than giving you vague and ambiguous essays. Your essays will be based on medical questions, say insulin, diabetes mellitus, and all that. And you have prior knowledge of what the essays are talking about, and it gets better as you practice it. But it is very expensive. And if you don't have enough resources to dish out at this expense, I would advise going with the IELTS. Preparation period, like I said, you can start ASAP the moment you make a decision that you're going to pursue your career in the UK outside Nigeria. You can start preparing for writing the IELTS and the OET. And when to take the exams depends on when you are ready. Don't book the exams when you're not ready, because if you take it, you're going to fail it. Book when you're ready, practice, make sure you think you are very ready. Get someone who has written the exams before to vet your aces, look at your errors, correct them. And whenever you think you're very much prepared, you can book the exams and take it. Waiting period for the exams. For the IELTS, I think the maximum day it takes for the results to be out is just 13 days, while the OET takes around 21 days now, which is roughly around 3 weeks. Then the Plab 1 exams. After passing your IELTS, the next thing is to book the Plab 1 exams. I believe a lot of questions and so many issues have been raised about booking a Plab 1 test now because it's becoming really, really competitive and difficult. It used to be that after passing your English test, it takes you a couple of weeks, you get a slot and book your Plab 1 test. But the waiting period for you to take a Plab 1 exams now is at least 6 months, which is the earliest. You can go as long as a year or so. So passing the IELTS is something, getting the Plab 1 slot is another. And like we have advised a lot of brothers and sisters regarding taking the Plab 1 test now, because if you have a slot, you cannot afford to jeopardize it, because getting a slot per year, failing that exams tantamounts to the fact that you have to wait for another year to book a slot to take the next exam, which is equivalent to around 2 years wasted. So the best plan is after your English test, start practicing even without having a date for your Plab 1 exams. Exam preparation in Plab 1. What materials do you need? So many people have said so many things about what you need and what not you need to do regarding your Plab 1. Alhamdulillah, I succeeded in creating a group some few months back, around 6, 7 months, which I added some brothers into the group who have actually passed the Plab 1 exam, as well as some of our sisters from the north, across the country, so many people who have actually graduated. And the objective of the group is to start preparing early, because early preparation leads to success in the Plab exams. At first, we were meant to believe that it is just basic clinical knowledge that you've been taught in the various universities. It's going to take you just a few months, 1 month, 2 months to go through everything and pass it beautifully. But to be honest with you, just to be realistic, the curriculum in the UK and the common illnesses you see in the UK is quite different from what we have back home. Familiarizing yourself with these stuffs and getting to know what needs to be known is very important. And I would say preparing for a Plab exams, you need minimum at least 3 months to prepare for these exams. Some have gone to prepare for 6 months, but your biggest enemy is time. And procrastinating when you need to practice is the biggest problem you would actually encounter when preparing for Plab 1 exam, because the syllabus is very, very bulky. And you would not want to find yourself in that situation when you can't actually go through everything and cover it up. Material you need for the practice. First, I will recommend you get Plabable. The Plabable is an application that has every category or segment of the curriculum that is being covered in Plab 1 exams. A lot of people would say it is not recommended by the GMC. The GMC would not recommend any app for you, but we're actually talking based on experience of what you need to get to pass the Plab 1. If you have the Plabable application, which we have both the offline copy and the online copy, which you subscribe to, and I think the minimum subscription you can do is that of 3 months, which costs around £25, and that of 5 months, it costs around £35, which will amount to around say 40,000 naira, and it's for 5 months. So when you have this app, you need a Plab key. The Plab keys is another app which you can use to augment whatever you're learning in Plabable. Using both applications together gives you a vast knowledge of the whole concept of Plab 1 exams. And believe you me, if you have the Plabable app and the Plab keys, you should be all right with the Plab exams, coupled with some websites which you can actually use to seek for references and clarify some things which you believe are not very clear to you. You can use the patient info site, and you can use the nice.ck. These are sites you can use when preparing for the Plab 1 exams. Then the studying period, how long it's going to take you. We've talked about that, at least 3 months. What you need to do, how to book the Plab 1 exams. After passing your English exams, you're required to create a GNC online account, which gives you the time to actually get all your information, your medical school examinations and all that, the school you graduated from, into an account, and a profile will be created for you. It takes a minimum of at least 48 hours to get your account verified and checked. Then you can book a slot to take the Plab 1 exams. The examination, it's usually on a Thursday, and it takes a minimum of 6 weeks after writing your exams before you get the results of your Plab 1 exams. And the pass mark and the pass rate is based on the performance of the candidates that have taken the exam within that specific period of time. So there is no there's no set point for a pass mark that says, okay, you're going to pass when you score 130 or 140. It depends on the performance of the candidates that took the exam at that point in time. So the waiting period after the Plab 1 exams, it takes around 6 weeks for you to get your result from the day you took the exams to when the result is going to be released. And over the years, the pass mark has always been around 110 to 117. But recently, based on performances, it has been around 115 to 117. So after your Plab exams, you can actually book for your Plab 2 exams. This is not based on the schedules for the Plab exams. Sorry, I didn't tell you about it. The Plab exams is not, the Plab 1 exam is taken 4 times in every year. So it's in February, in May, in August, and November. So you can take these exams 4 times in 1 year. So when you book in the slot, you pick the available slots and the location you want to take your test. Next slide. So this is just a format of how the Plab 1 exam paper comes in. It is an OMR exams, which you take true, false in every question. And most of the questions are based on best of 5. So you pick the most appropriate answer or the least appropriate answer. That is how you go about your questions. And for more information regarding materials to study for these exams, I can actually drop some of these materials. You can send me an email. I would gladly send some of them to you if you're willing. Next slide. So to summarize the whole presentation, it's about the English test and the Plab 1 exams. Like I said, the English test is the rate limiting step that tells if your Plab journey is going to be a successful one or not, which we are actually waiting for everyone who is in this platform, who is willing to go into this journey of taking the Plab 1 exams, to have a hitch-free English test, because it gets really, really frustrating. If the English test is bad, it just turns you off. It derails you. It gives you this negative vibe of, I don't want to do this anymore because it costs money. And the biggest concern is, without money, you actually feel you're not progressing. And that's when you start to think about so many things. Do I need to do this? Can I do this? Is this something worth doing for me? How many times do I need to write this English test before I make it? But the important thing is, if you take the English test very seriously and pass it well, you get the enthusiasm, the zeal to go ahead with your Plab journey, and it makes it really, really easy for you to proceed. So I will urge you to start with a good determination of, do I want to take an English test? If yes, which do I need to take? Is it OET or IELTS? If I have the financial backing and strength I'll go for the LET because it's much easier for me. It is simpler, it is medical based. But if I don't, I will need at least 4, 5, 6 weeks to sit, get the concept of the IELTS, practice it well. When I'm ready, I'll book the exam. It is cheaper and easy to pass when you know the concept of the exams. For the Plab exams, how do you go about it? When you're ready, pick a slot, start practicing on time, go bit by bit, form discussion groups, discuss with people, find out what you need to know about the exams. As you keep practicing, you get very confident about the whole concept of the exams. When you think you're ready, book a slot and take it. And I believe from the English test, you would want to come to the UK to practice because it is a very, very good avenue to improve your medical practice, to grow in life. And like Dr. Noura said, it is not always just about money. Even for the fact that UK, so say you will get money, but to be honest, you start somewhere. Don't start looking at the money you're going to get. Start somewhere, get these things done, and I believe from there we can move forward. Thank you very much for listening. I will now take your questions in the next, say, 5-10 minutes, if I still have time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mustapha, for such a wonderful presentation. It's full of knowledge and guide to how we can proceed in the entire journey to the UK. Just a reminder that question sessions are not at the end of the presentation. Rather, we will take all questions in the chat box and we'll have a look at it and then hopefully be able to respond to all the questions in the end. And in the event that we're not able to answer all the questions, we can individually send emails so that we can respond to the specific questions that you may put in the chat box. And not just that, we would also try to share valuable things that may be very helpful for you in the course of your Plab journey or in the course of your journey to the UK. I would like to share a few things briefly before we move to the next presentation. That would be by our colleague, Dr. Adamu Sule. I can see him ready by the screen, and trust me, he's a very, very knowledgeable person who's the right person for the aspect that has been given to present on. But before we start this presentation, we've got a few minutes, and I thought I should speak to you about a few things that I've learned so far. I would say that one of the most important things in the entire Plab journey is information. And this transcends beyond just the Plab journey, and it goes way beyond that to the extent that if you are to practice in the system and also to progress your career, you really need guide and information from people. I've learned that from a lot of people that I've worked with so far. One of the things that you would get to learn when you move to the UK, hopefully in the near future, is that you would get assigned clinical and educational supervisors. Now, these are very senior clinical practitioners that you would probably work in the unit that you've been posted to work in the future. And these people would guide you through what you need to know about the practice in general, and then how to plan your career. Because truly, it is not just about moving to the UK, but then what do you wish to achieve? And to be able to achieve your objective, especially when it comes to training, you would need a lot of guide and a lot of support to be able to create the appropriate portfolio to get into the training and hopefully to be able to complete your training. And those people would always urge me when I started interacting with them to network with people in the right pathway that I need to go into in terms of training in the future. And that has been really helpful for me. I've met a lot of people who have guided me and have given me really valuable information about how to proceed. And I would all encourage you to try and network with a lot of us that are here. Some of us have had very lengthy experience with the NHS as well as the UK system, and they would be able to provide guide for you. these are really important things that we should be sharing. When I started the Plab journey a couple of years ago, I remembered that one of my major challenge was knowing how to proceed with things. I started and then I gave up at some point because of a lot of reasons, some personal and some due to misinformation and misconception that I've got along the way. And really that has affected the journey so far. But alhamdulillah, we are where we are at the moment. And the truth is, without the appropriate information, you really can't move forward. You can't make significant progress. And to be able to get all that information, you need to find the right platform and the right channel. Unfortunately, a few years ago, we don't have much information. There were people who have created some platform on social media that has been helping people throughout the migration process. Nasser Joni, I think, is one of the platforms that I remember. It's on Facebook, and I think he's got a website at the moment. And also Aurora, they've all been very helpful in terms of giving information. But these are things that we keep getting bits of it whilst we're going through the journey. And later we realized, we thought that why not we share this information to those who are coming up and then give them the necessary things in a simpler way so that they don't have to go through some of the struggles that we face in trying to journey across the other part of the world, that's the UK. We have still a few minutes until the next presentation, but I think to save time, because I know there's a time difference between Nigeria and the UK at the moment, and it might appear that as though we've started a bit late in Nigeria, because it should be about a couple of minutes past the top of the hour. That's past 9 p.m. and I don't want us to keep getting late. So in the event that our presenters are able to finish very early, then we can quickly move to the next presentation, and hopefully we should be able to make significant progress and finish on time. And a very big apology for the fact that we've had some technical issues prior to starting the session overall, and that's about the PowerPoint presentation. The Google Meet is slightly different from the one we are very familiar with in the past, and sharing screen is a lot easier on the mobile devices. I've tried to do that on my PC and it proved unsuccessful. I've asked support from other colleagues and still I was not able to do that. So for that reason, you might see myself sharing some part of my mobile phone screen just to make the session progress. Dr. Adamu, if you're ready, I would be preparing your slide on the mobile phone and then you can start the presentation.
Your questions will take 10.
And along the way, some of the presenters can respond to the questions that have been posted on the chat box. And if you have as much questions as possible, do post them on the chat box, and hopefully one of us will be able to respond before the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Very important. That's it.
Dr. Mustapha, we can still hear you as you go through the chat, so I would encourage you to mute. Very good, thank you. Yeah, Dr. Adamu, if you're ready, you can start the presentation, and you're already unmuted, so you can start. We can't hear you. You're not very audible, Dr. Adamu. You have to speak up, or
Can you hear
maybe
me now?
have a look at your. Yeah, that's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay. Salam Alaykum once again. Thank you, Alhassan, for the introduction. My name is Adamu Sule, and like my previous co-presenters have mentioned, the purpose of this seminar really is to provide the right information for our brother colleagues back home, so that the journey is much easier and more seamless, because as we went through our own experiences, we realized really one of the limiting factors is having the right information at the right time. Hopefully, this seminar would be able to help help us with that. So I'm going to be talking about the Plab 2 journey and getting your UK visa. So this is going to be a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the Plab 2 exam first, and then your UK visa, because you will have to book the Plab 2 exam before you then apply for the visa. Under the Plab 2, we'll talk about the eligibility, a little overview of the Plab 2 exam. I won't go into details because you would get more details when you are during your preparation period. The costs and certain tips and things you need to kind of take care of and take note of during your preparation and as well as during the exam. So, and then the application process for the visa and the costs. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. So for the eligibility, you must have passed the Plab 1 exam, and like my previous presenter, the presenter Mustapha mentioned, once you pass your IELTS, you have to create a GMC account. That's where you book your Plab 1, and you use the same website to book the Plab 2. Also having a valid English exam really shouldn't be a problem, because you would have passed, you would have had that in order to pass the Plab 1 as well. So a little overview. Next slide, please. A little overview of the Plab 2 exam. It is a practical exam. So Plab 1 is more or less theory. It's best of 5. Plab 1 is best of 5 theory examination, while Plab 2 is OSCE. And I think as from my medical schools, I think most of us would have had experiences with OSCEs. So in Plab 2 is held in Manchester only. There are 2 centers within Manchester where this takes place, but you will be assigned to any of them randomly by the GMC. So that shouldn't be a problem. Then the exam has 18 stations, 16 of which are actual stations, while 2 are rest stations, which are spaced evenly so that you kind of have a bit of rest within the exam. You may not start on an active station, you might start at a rest station, but that shouldn't be a problem. Each station lasts for about 8 minutes, and before starting each station, you have about 90 seconds to read the question and kind of formulate what you're going to do when you get into the room for that particular question. The exam, each station tests you on 3 domains: data gathering, that's history, history taking and examination, and then management of the cases, that's knowing what investigations need to be done, what treatments need to be given to the patient, and then interpersonal skills, which is really, as we all know, just rapport, how you deliver the information you have for the patient, and how much empathy you show to the patient, and really develop a kind of connection with the patient. So, and each of them carries 4 marks, and really you kind of find it a bit odd that interpersonal skills will carry the same marks as data gathering and management. I mean, if you're a good communicator, this is really just a bonus for you. And I think a lot of people make up a lot of their marks in this regard. And this is where a lot of practice is very important. If you practice a lot of the stations, your interpersonal skills will
go right along, because you won't have to be thinking about what's the next question. You kind of just be thinking of how to deliver it, and that should help. And the 16 questions will cover a wide range of topics. We have surgical cases, including obstetrics, orthopedics, ENT. You have medical as well, some dermatology. But medical cases, just like Plab 1, cover most of the questions you will get. I'm not going into details, like I said, of the content of the exams. You'll get that when you are doing your actual preparation. And then to pass the exam, you need to pass at least 10 stations. That's 10 out of the 16 stations. And then just like Plab 1, you must have passed the minimum required scores. That the total score must be above the minimum required scores. And they always, like Plab 1, they grade on a bell curve. So most people will pass. You will have some few people that will fail, because there has to be a cutoff mark. But it varies based on each performance, based on the bell curve generated by each iteration of the examination. Next slide, please. Sorry, I have the slides here on my computer. I'm just looking at them. Okay. So preparation. It is advisable for you to book for a course for this exam. I have heard of some people that write the exam without attending any courses, but these are exceptions to the rule. And I think we should not think of ourselves as exceptions to the rule. We should be the rule. If you're an exception, fine, but it's advisable for you to book for a course. Usually the course lasts for about 16 days. There are online versions and there are face-to-face versions, and there are different providers. As you can see, I've listed about 4 of them: Samson Academy, Dr. Swami, Aspire to Plab, and Aurora. But for Nigeria, really, the most relevant for us is Samson Academy, being that they provide a course in Nigeria, in Lagos, which you can attend. And you have a lot of Nigerians which you can kind of communicate with and take the courses together. The courses will provide you with an adequate amount of, let's say, they will cover all the questions that have come in the past in terms of the different stations, and they will make sure that you have an idea or a full kind of scheme to go through for answering each type of station. So really, it's once you have that information, the most important thing would be how much how able are you to execute what the information you've gotten from the courses. So it's not really the fact that you won't get the information. The issue is how much of the information are you able to deliver to get those marks that you need. Also, the courses do have mannequins you can practice with, but those are generally only available if you are doing the face-to-face course, not the online. Because I mean, you can't practice with the mannequin remotely. You have to handle the mannequin. So if you are keen on that, you may want to attend the face-to-face, so that as soon as you kind of do a certain station, you might just go ahead and practice on the mannequin. However, I think all the courses would tell you that even if you do the online, when you come to the UK, you can go to their centers and practice with the mannequins for as long as you like until you write your exams. The course providers also do mocks. I personally did Samson, and I think most of us did something. Something gives you up to 3 mocks. You can book extra and pay for that. And the mocks are very good. And in fact, because Samsung would give you 6 minutes for each station, means that if you're able to pass Samsung mocks, you should do reasonably well because you have 8 minutes in the actual exam. Prep time. Now, it varies from individual to individual. I know that, but I would suggest that at a minimum, do not start preparing for this exam less than 4 weeks to your date of exam. That's including doing the course and then practicing, because you really need to like have the stations almost at your fingertips, like at spinal level. You're just saying the answers. You don't have to start thinking of things. But if you have practice well enough, it should not be a problem. Next slide, please. So the costs. Obviously, the cost has changed from the time we wrote it, but the current cost structure is £906 until March 31st, when it will now become £934. And for the course, ranges from 600 to 650. £650 is for the face-to-face course. But if you are booking in a group, I think about 5, they can give you a discount of almost £100. So if you can gather a group of people and book for the course for a certain same period, you can get that discount. So next slide, please. Yeah. So these are a few things I kind of took note of from my experience of writing the exam. Try to have enough time. I mean, the 4 weeks, yes, but I mean, it's doable, but try not to put too much pressure on yourself. If you can get more than 4 weeks, that would be ideal. I mean, give yourself as much time as you need to pass the exam. The second thing is regular practice. Regular practice. You have to practice these stations a lot. It's not enough for you to practice a station once or twice. I mean, you have to, even if it's not like actually practicing with another person, like going through the stations, you probably need to go, in my own opinion, at least probably three or more times, so that it's kind of fresh in your memory all the time. Practice groups are key. You don't need to have face-to-face practice, but you can have online practice groups where you can practice history taking, or especially the stations that don't require a mannequin, like physical examination, for example, which you would have to do face-to-face. The next thing is focus. Please don't try as much as possible not to have other things going on. I know life is complicated. We probably have work, also juggling a family. Maybe we have other things going on, but as much as possible, try to reduce the distractions. Try and focus on this and just dedicate the time to pass this once. Just put it in your mind that you're writing this exam once, and you will do whatever it takes to pass it once, and inshallah you will make it. Next tip is take the mock seriously. I know some people will be like, it's just a mock exam. I mean, let's just go there, just have an idea of what is going on. I will be serious for the final exam. You will have 3 mocks, but try to make sure you pass every one of them. Even if you don't pass, but your effort should show that with each subsequent mock exam, your marks should be improving, and your confidence in writing the exam is improving. And if you are able to do all the 3 mocks, by the time you go to your exam, it will basically be another mock, like a 4th mock you're doing, and you just breeze through, inshallah. The next thing is I believe, in my own opinion anyway, because I did the face-to-face course in the UK. It's more expensive, but I realize the level of concentration you have if you are, say, doing an online course and you're in your room, it's not the same compared to if you are in the you're present at the venue. So and I mean, you find a lot of people having distractions, maybe someone coming in, or maybe you doze off, or you're hungry, you go up to get, before you come back, some information has come. Another thing is you may have certain questions you want to ask, but because you're online, you may not be able to get answers to your questions. But if you are physically at the course, even after they finish the session, you can walk up to the tutor and say, okay, what about this? How can I do this? What is your suggestion about this? So those are some of the perks of doing the face-to-face. But I must say it's a bit more expensive. There is a face-to-face that Samsung gives in Lagos, which for I think a lot of the audience may be also an issue, because they'll probably be either in Kano or somewhere up north. But if you can muster the funds, I think it would be well worth it. But a lot of people have passed with just doing the online a version of it. I'm not saying it's not possible. I mean, a lot of people have passed with it. I just think that it will make things easier, and plus you meet a lot of people that are also writing the exam face to face, people that are not generally in your own circle of friends. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Last thing. Please don't underestimate this exam. When you go through the course, you be tempted to say, I mean, it looks simple, but the difficult part is execution. This is what really makes a lot of people kind of have trouble, I think, in the exams. You have an idea of what the stations are, or from even reading the question, you know what the station is. But if you've not practiced executing, like doing the examination to get the marks, and I'm sure if you've had experience with OSCEs in medical school, there are certain things they are looking for. So if you've not practiced and kind of had an idea of what exactly is required for this station, you will end up just either giving the wrong type of performance or being confused. But if you've practiced and practiced and practiced, and you've not taken this exam lightly, I mean, it will come easy for you, inshallah. But the most important thing is, don't underestimate this exam. Please don't underestimate it. Inshallah, you will do well. So that's that. So for the UK visa application process, what you need is a standard visitor's visa, which is valid for about, I think, 6 months. And you do that through the UK immigration website. For you to apply for your visa, you must have booked for your Plab 2, which means you've passed Plab 1 and you book for Plab 2. Now, when do you book for your Plab 2? Just like Plab 1, in my opinion, once you get your results, if you have the money, book it on the same day, because you don't want to have a long period after Plab 1 waiting to do Plab 2. If it's possible, as soon as you write your Plab 1, start making plans of having funds available for Plab 2. Once you get it, then book a date that is suitable for you, because the issue with Plab 2 is that even though they do it almost every day of the week throughout the year, there are a lot of people booking for it. So there's so much pressure, and maybe if you may be free in the next 2-3 months, and that's the ideal time for you, if you delay, that slot might go away. So it makes it easier for you to plan and book the right date that you would like. If you can just, as soon as you get your result, just go on and book it for the date that is more convenient for you. Otherwise, you might miss it, and you might end up being pressurized to book a date that may not be suitable for your own schedules. You must have a valid passport. So certain documents that you must show that you kind of have enough ties to where you are from. Like, for example, if they might ask you if you own a home, you must show evidence for that. I mean, these things may not be relevant for most of us because we are renters. But if you are working for an employer, like I'm sure a lot of us are, you would need to show that your employer is aware that you're traveling, and you have an adequate leave from your employer to cover the period of your travel. You must show that you have enough money to cover the expenses of your trip. That includes your ticket, your living expenses. You don't need to show that you have money to book for the exam because you've already booked for the exam. The money is already gone. But there's one key thing. The money for all this your travel and your upkeep in the UK for the Plab 2 exam must be in your account at least for a quarter, like that's 3 months prior to the time you apply for the visa, because it kind of gives them an idea that, oh, this guy is not coming to become a burden on our system, because really that's what they're trying to do. They just don't want people to come to their country and end up not going back. So they put all these hurdles just to weed out certain people that come to the UK and don't go back, or they become a burden on their system. So try as much as possible to have the money, or even if you don't have the money, try and get the money in your account 3 months before you apply for the visa. The next thing is you need to have your pay slips at least for a quarter, that's 3 months, for the last 3 months, which would be reflected also in your bank statements. Vaccination certificate, that was relevant when we were doing, that was during the COVID time. I don't think it's that relevant now because the UK no longer requires vaccinations to visit the UK. But I think they may ask for others, maybe like yellow fever or something like that. But you will have all that information on the website when you go through it. If you have a sponsor, it will really help, because it kind of gives them more confidence that if anything happens, there's somebody that can kind of take care of your expenses. Or if maybe something unforeseen happens, you may need extra money for certain things. So if you don't have that, it's not a deal breaker, but I just think it kind of augments your application. And then after you've gotten all these documents, which you would all that information which you would put on the website, I think that the hard copies you would take along when you're going for your biometrics, but you will fill in the application form with all that information that I've talked about, and they would want to see also like how much you're earning and things like that. You would input that in the application, and then you will book for your biometrics. And when you're going for your biometrics, that's when you take all these physical documents like the passport, the pay slips, the bank statements, sponsorship letter if you have one, and any other supporting documents that you feel shows that you are kind of a responsible person that would not come and be a burden on their system. Next slide, please. The UK visa. The cost, like I said, is a standard visa, UK visitors visa. The current cost is around £100, but it may change from the time by the time you go and apply. So, but it should be around that. They have private companies that take the biometrics for them and also collect your documents. So you have to pay that separately. You have to book that, but it's all integrated into the UK immigration website. Once you submit your application, they will direct you to that website to book for the biometrics, and then you pay for that. You can pay extra if you are in a time crunch and you want to get the visa done quickly. There you will see all the categories on the website when you go there. Yeah, and again, the price may change. I mean, as you know, when the economic situation in Nigeria is kind of volatile, so the prices may be different from what I'm quoting here. Certain additional costs that we need to kind of take note of. For the visa, I mean, if you are in Kano, for example, you have to go to Abuja. You have to factor that in. Are you traveling by road? Are you traveling by air? Are you going to Kaduna and then taking the train? So all those things need to be factored in. If you're going to the UK, that's after you've gotten your visa. You have to decide what airline you're going to take. In booking your flight, I will suggest that you book your flight if it's possible, at 1 or 2 months 1 or 2 months before you travel. The reason being because the flights are cheaper if you book them very early. So if you can book them early, and then don't just go to one place and buy the ticket. Shop around for a visa for your ticket, because you can find a difference in price almost 200, 300,000 from different places. So try as much as possible to check different websites, different airlines, and shop around as much as you can until you find the one that you're comfortable with, and then you book that one. And then accommodation. Now, when you get to the UK, there are several, you can go for Airbnb. Some of my colleagues in the past who know certain people can do come and stay with some people for the period. But there are some providers that can provide hostel accommodation um, for specifically this purpose. Um, and they can be a bit cheaper. I've noticed also that there are certain people from other parts of the world that when they come in a group, and what they do is they rent an apartment. I don't know how they were able to swing that, but this is something maybe we can look into. Maybe if we have colleagues that are in Manchester, maybe that's something that we can explore. It might be a bit cheaper than going for Airbnb and things like that. So the overall cost, this is just an estimate, but I think I have an inkling that it might be a bit more than that. So it might be about 1.5 to about 2,500. 1,500, I mean, it's just the cost of the exam and the course. That's 1.5. So it just goes up from there. So you have your flight tickets, you have your cost of your upkeep, food, transportation, phone bills. That shouldn't be that much. I mean, if you're staying for about 2 weeks, I don't think you should spend more than 200 to 300 pounds. I mean, unless maybe you have a very long commute or something like that, but it shouldn't be a problem. But I think realistically, you may be looking at almost close to 3,000 pounds, really. I mean, if you are going to do it comfortably. So last slide, please. So these are some links to important information that you may need. GMC website, YouTube. I mean, what to expect on the exam day. The Samsung website where you can book for the course. Road to UK is a blog about Plab 1, Plab 2, everything about the Plab journey. You can get information on that website. They also have a YouTube channel. You can watch that. And then you have the UK immigration website where you can go and for the visitors a visa. So all in all, I mean, I think I've used most of my time, but I have 3 minutes left. I will encourage you that this process is doable. Inshallah, if you have, I'm sure you have the right determination by the fact that you've committed time to attend this seminar. You are very determined to go through this process. So inshallah, I mean, if we are determined and we help each other, it shall be a success, inshallah. And I strongly encourage you not to lose faith. Even if you fail your IELTS, try again, get the right people, and inshallah you will make it. Don't give up hope, inshallah. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adamu Sule, for the wonderful presentation, full of information, full of ideas, and hopefully I believe some of us, and rather all of us, have benefit from one thing or the other from the presentation. If you have questions, you can put them on the chat box. Our colleagues will have a look at it, and hopefully we'll be able to respond to all the questions before the end of the presentation. I've put a few points down here that I would really love to comment on, but considering time factor, we'll still move to the next presentation, and hopefully in the end or during the during my own personal section, I might touch a few things regarding what Dr. Adam was talked about. We'll be having the next presentation from Dr. Abdul Hafiz, and I think he should be ready. I will put his slide on the show, and then hopefully we should be able to make progress. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Adamu, and all of us for patiently waiting and listening and gathering all the information. Do not give up. Do not give up. Thank you. Dr. Abdul Hafiz, if you're listening, you can start the presentation.
Oh, okay.
We've got your slide ready. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Can I just get confirmation that I'm being heard loud and clear?
Absolutely. We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's great. So, hi, I'm Dr. Abdulafiz Ashiru. I'm currently working with Nottingham University Hospital Trusts. So I'll be talking about GMC registration and license. First off, big ups to everybody that showed up for the presentation. I hope you learn a lot from this gathering of information that we've done for you guys. So let's begin, please. So we're talking about the different types of registration, the requirements needed, the fees. Then there's also the aspect of giving up and restoring your registration or license. And finally, the much thought about, or should I say, one of the things that often bothers a lot of people, which is gap in practice. What happens when I have a huge gap in practice? And I'll be using my own personal journey as a good example. So, types of GMC registration. We have the, of course, provisional registration, and then, hi, sorry, I can't see the slide again.
Just to confirm, you can't see the slides, right?
Yeah, I can't.
A bit of a technical issue with my phone, but I will sort that out in the jiffy. You can proceed with the presentation, and then hopefully I should be able to sort that.
Oh,
yeah, I
okay.
think we can proceed this way. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we have the provisional registration, full registration, then the GP registration, and the specialist registration. So of course, provisional registration is just similar to what we have in Nigeria, or basically all around the world, which is provisional registration basically means you've graduated, you have your accepted diploma or primary medical qualification, but you haven't had your internship done. So you can apply for this kind of registration also. Well, if you finish from UK medical universities, but for we overseas medical graduates, yeah, you have to finish from an acceptable school, having an acceptable primary medical qualification. But then you have to have passed the Plab 1 and Plab 2, but you shouldn't have done your internship. So the thing about the provisional registration is if you can fulfill this criteria, yeah, you apply for it, and they give you a span of 3 years, 30 months to finish the provisional, for you to undergo the provisional training till you get switched to the full training. Because we hear their foundation program, which is like our own internship, is foundation year 1 and year 2, which is split into 2 years. So provisional registration basically is just you doing your foundation year 1, after which you get switched over to full registration. So for the full registration, which is one thing that most of us are often advised to do, seeing as most of us do, it's better if you get your internship done. So for full registration, for overseas graduates, or should I say international medical graduates, of course, your acceptable diploma, then an acceptable pattern of internship, then knowledge and skills. Now, this knowledge and skills, it's broad based on the fact that for you to get this full registration, of course, your knowledge and skills could, if you're going through the Plab pathway, then that would include you passing your Plab 1 and then your Plab 2. But there are other ways also, which is what some people do by getting these postgraduate qualifications, such as from royal colleges. That's where you hear people saying, oh, it's not necessary for you to go through the Plab pathway. If you can write your MRCS, which is for those planning to go through the surgical pathway, if you can write the part A and part B, then you don't need Plab. You just need the first 2 things, which are the primary medical qualification and your pattern of internship. And for instance, if you've written the MRCP, both the part 1, part 2, and the PACES, and you've passed them, then you don't need your Plab. So the onus now depends on you. Many people believe, well, I don't think many people believe, I think it's just factual that the Plab pathway is easier than the Royal College's pathway, because for one, the Royal College exams are quite expensive and they require a lot of preparation to go through. So aside from this, can we please go to the next slide? If you're eligible for GP or specialist registration also, then you automatically bypass all the troubles. But then before you can be a GP or a specialist, of course, you have to have a full registration. So that basically means if you're done, if you're qualified, and then you speak with GMC, and then they go through your documents and they see that, okay, this person is having way more knowledge, and this person is like a GP from his country or a specialist from another country, then of course you don't have to write Plab or write all those other things. You go through another pathway, but automatically you get granted the full registration. So how to apply to join the UK Medical Register? Of course, the GMC website is it's a very good website. It's interactive. They ask you questions, you input the answers, and it shows you which pathway will be suitable for you. So basically, you check your eligibility on the website, then you complete an application form. Then you pay a fee. We would get to the fee part later. Then you provide the required evidence and then attend an identity check. Now, this identity check, so many years ago, but things have changed now. You get to do the identity check when you're there doing your Plab 2. Before, they don't do the identity check. Once you've passed and then you get registered, and then you have to show up in the UK, go to the GMC office, and then get your identity checked. But everything gets done once you're writing the Plab 2. So for the required evidence, of course, Plab 1, Plab 2, you should have passed that. That also includes your acceptable pattern of internship. Then this also includes all the things you've underwent since you graduated, be it medical or non-medical work, be it when you were still holding registration or when or when you were not holding registration, when you've been licensed or when you've not been licensed. Basically, anything that you've been doing since you graduated, you have to put it as part of the evidence. Now, the tricky part is a lot of people feel when we graduate, of course, it takes a while before you get MDCN, especially international medical graduates. It takes a while before you get MDCN exam written. Even once you done passing, it takes a while before you get inducted. So you're having a lot of gap before you get registered. But not to worry, they make life easier up to the point that if you are not doing anything, just put it as that. Just maybe say you're taking a vacation, or maybe say you were preparing to write your IELTS. Just write it there, like, oh, from this date to that date, I was preparing for my IELTS, or from this date to that day, I was preparing for my Plab 1. Anyway, point being, there is a guide for you to fill the thing, and they make it easier. And of course, it is very, very important that you do not lie about whatever it is that you put there, because they can be very investigating. For instance, I remembered while I was filling my own evidence, and then of course, Nigeria, even without license, you can go to hospitals, you can assist in operations sometimes, you can go to clinic and observe and do a lot of things. So while I was writing it, I wrote it there that, oh, I observed and assisted in obstetrics and gynecological operations, because I felt, hey, this should give me an edge. This would show them that I haven't been sitting at home and doing nothing. However, at that point in time, MDCN they haven't granted me my license. So they emailed me back and they were like, okay, I should contact MDCN and let MDCN and confirm to them that, oh, indeed, in my country, you are allowed without a license to assist with operations. So I had to mail GMC back that, oh, okay, it was a mistake. I only observed that I didn't assist. So please do not lie or put something. If you are in doubt of anything, ask those that have done it before you, and we're all here will give you the necessary advice, just like we asked those before us also. So going on to the next slide, which is the fees. So when applying for the full registration, um, ideally it's supposed to be 433 British pounds yearly, but they give a discount for newly qualified doctors, which means if you're submitting your application within 5 years of you finishing medical school, getting your MBBS or MBBCH, and then within that 5 years, you've done your IELTS, Plab 1, Plab 2, and you're now applying for GMC registration, the full registration, you only get to pay £161. But by April this year, it's going to be £166. So that's one of the benefits that GMC are giving to we newly qualified doctors. So, and fees to remain on the register, it's still the same £166 for we newly qualified doctors. So can we please move on to the next slide? Yeah, can we move on to the next one also? So the giving up and restoring your license or registration, this is also one thing that GMC advises. If you're not working as a doctor, or if you're working overseas and you're not planning to be working in the UK at any point in time, yeah, you can relinquish your registration and license, or you can just relinquish your license and hold your registration, still have registration. Point being, a good example was when I got my license, my GMC license. At that point in time, I had started NYSC. So after I got the license, after 2 weeks or so, GMC emailed me and they were like, "Do I have a designated body? Which hospital am I registered to that I'm currently working?" So I freaked out and then I contacted Dr. Arun and he advised me and he said, if in the next 1 year or the next 3 to 6 months or 6 months to 1 year, I don't plan on coming to the UK to search for a job and start working, then it would be better for me to just tell them to relinquish my license. I would still hold the registration, which means I'm still registered with GMC, but my license is relinquished because they like to know they like to know how many doctors they have that are active on the register. So you can relinquish your license, and whenever you're done and you want to apply for jobs or you've gotten a job, you want to return to the UK to start working, then you apply for your license again. And it's only going to cost you £10. And all you have to do is just tell them what you've been doing, whether you've been working in Nigeria under a medical capacity or whether you've just taken a break or something like that. You just write it there and it doesn't take time. They don't waste time. Before you know it, they would reinstate your license. So can we go to the next slide, please? So these are just some information as regards fees to change your registration status. Of course, you can see the second row and colon. It's just if you want to erase your license, if you want to relinquish your license, and then if you want to restore it. Of course, the first one, the restoration fee, that's 351. That's if GMC erases your license due to some issues, maybe some administration issues or something like that. So, gaps in practice. Based on my personal journey, I've had people freak out and ask, "Oh, what if I finish and then I'm having like a gap of so many months having done anything medical or whatsoever?" You don't have to worry. For instance, I finished MBBCH in 2017. After I finished, I returned to Nigeria. I finished from Egypt, by the way. So I returned to Nigeria, wanted to write MDCN, but then I couldn't write MDCN 2017 because I finished August. MDCN was September then. So I had to wait till April 2018. Of course, I already had a massive gap. And then April 2018, I wrote MDCN. I unfortunately failed MDCN. And then I was like, okay, what next for me? So I started my Plab journey, wrote IELTS sometime around June 2018. After that, wrote Plab 1 November 2018. Then I spoke with my friends and they were like, it's better to have the internship done. And if I'm up for it, why not return to Egypt and get my internship done? So I returned to Egypt, got my internship done 2019 to 2020. And then 2020, returned to Nigeria, applied for Plab 2, but then COVID happened. So I had to postpone the Plab 2 twice to 2021. But then I was lucky to get MDCN exam done 2020, November. And Alhamdulillah, I passed. Then Plab 2, 2021. After finishing Plab 2, 2021, I passed, applied for my GMC registration and license. So I was registered and I had the license 2021. But remember, I said I started NYSC, which was also 2021. So, point being, I had so many gaps from that 2017 to 2021, 2022. But that still didn't affect them getting me registered and giving me a license. So don't worry about the gap in practice. I've heard of people who have 10 years gap in practice. It doesn't matter. Of course, it's written on their website that if you have any gap in practice, if you've not been in a medical situation, blah, 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 it's quite easier than that. Forget about the gaps. Just focus on getting the exams done. Focus on writing your IELTS. Focus on getting your Plab 1 done. Focus on getting your Plab 2 done. and then apply for the registration and license. And the beauty about it is GMC are always there to listen to you. They are easy to contact. You can call them and they will pick up their phone. Or you can send them an email and they would reply to you within 3 to 5 working days. And of course, they will reply to you. And also, don't worry about them saying you need a work email address from your employer whenever you want to submit anything. Most of our places of work in Nigeria don't have work email addresses. Most of us just use Gmail or Yahoo Mail personal email addresses. Even if they say that, contact them. Tell them, let them know that where you're coming from, there is no work email address. And they would tell you, okay, what other options are available? Tell them the personal email address. Worst case scenario, they'll tell you, okay, fine. You accept the personal email address. Just get the letter-headed paper, and then your employer should fill it and sign and stamp, and that's it. And that is something that can be easily done, easily gotten in Nigeria. Then you do it, you scan it, you send it to them, and they are fine with it. So I know it's everybody's having a lot ahead of them, and the journey is different for everybody. But I pray that inshallah, anyone that's planning on going through this pathway, I pray that it goes well. Just don't give up. Well, of course, you've had 6 years, 6 years of medical school and a year of internship ahead of you. Just don't give up. 7 years, inshallah, everything is going to be fine. So thank you so much for your time. I hope I was able to give you something interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdulhafiz, for that interesting section. You've shared quite a lot, and I believe it certainly would be helpful for a lot of us. Like I mentioned earlier, getting insightful ideas and information is the key to the Plab journey and journey to work in the United Kingdom. And a lot of things that have been shared, some come from personal experience, and that has been really nice. And I would encourage all of us to stick to the final bits of this beautiful things that are organized by this important association to extend the message to our brothers and sisters that are trying to get registered. The next section would be chaired by myself, and I've got a few minutes to start. Before then, I would briefly touch on a few things that I put on my jota regarding some of the things that have been said in the previous presentations. Academy has been talked about, and apparently it used to be one of the things that give a lot of people difficulty in trying to make choice about whether they should join what academy they should join and which one gives the most benefit for getting registered. Now, I would say that we might have come across a number of them in the past on some of the slides that have been shared. Largely, we're not doing this for an advertisement purpose. We're not trying to make you register with one academy or the other. Rather, we're giving the information based on personal experiences, and hopefully it might be helpful for you in your own personal journey. I personally attended not an online academy and not a physical academy, and I went through it because I had to stick with my job back in Nigeria, and it was really difficult for me to get a specific period to be able to attend the physical academy, and for that reason I had to register with an online academy, and it gives me rather all that I needed. Largely, the academies will put you through the things that you need to know. Most of the information comes from previous recall. That is, from previous examination, students are able to remember what they've been asked, and the academies would get those recalls and put everything together and be able to come up with schemes or curriculums or guide in which they would provide the information that you need regarding what you're likely to face in the real examination. So we're not advertising, but to make the journey easier for all of you and to make the information available, we may mention a few of the academies. Like my colleague Dr. Adamu mentioned, we've got the Samsung, which operates in in Lagos, and it gives you an opportunity to attend the physical academy there. I did not attend Samson. There's the other alternative. The Key Point Academy was recently started, and it gives you an opportunity to get information regarding, to be able to get the necessary things. All the academies give you similar thing. If you look at their curriculum, if you look at the notes they share, it is largely similar, and it's just to give you an idea. And personally, I would say your preparation as an individual matters a lot, and to be able to form a group to practice with other people or candidates who are willing to go for the same examination, that is really helpful in the entire process. The other few things I would like to talk about, I've sent regarding the Plab 2 exam, it is largely practical, and although it's an OSCE exam, it conditions you sometimes into thinking that you are in a practical, you are in a clinical setup, because the people you meet, the patients or simulators, are rather very good actors, and they are very good in mimicking real life scenarios. So as you are following the stations, I would encourage you as much as possible to be very natural, to try as much as possible to demonstrate your own empathy and other things, skills that you've acquired throughout your practice as a doctor, and those would earn you further marks in terms of interpersonal skills. I've got a single minute before I start my presentation, so can I have a look? Practice with partners has been stated. It can never be overstated. I mean, as much as possible, get yourself a buddy and try to practice as much as you can, and be very, very diligent, and be very regular in terms of practice. That would be very helpful. Now, there's something that is a bit important in terms of understanding, and it would really help me through my presentation. It is regarding foundation training, because it's something that sounds completely alien to our knowledge. In Nigeria, immediately after medical school, you proceed to do the housemanship and then the NYC, and then start working as a doctor. But in the UK, the system is slightly different. They normally spend about 5 years in medical school, but the final year is the fourth year of the foundation training. And in that year, they normally start learning how to work as a doctor. In other words, you can say it's like like the first year of like a house job, like a housemanship, because it exposes you to the clinical setup, and you're being paid as a medical doctor, but still trying to learn. And that is the first foundation year, and you get a provisional license, like it's been mentioned earlier, to practice as a foundation year 1. And then after that, you proceed to work as a foundation year 2. And after completing your second year of foundation training, then you can proceed to start your career plan. Depending on whether you want to go into specialty training, you can start your specialty training after that. I would turn on my slide just a few moments so that we can dive into my presentation. For those of us that are joining late, I have talked earlier that we've had some challenges, some technical challenges regarding the entire presentation. I mean, getting the slides to play, run on the PC became very difficult, so we have to use the mobile device to make the session work, and it's been helpful so far. So by way of introduction, again, my name is Alhassan, Alhassan Abba Hussein, all my name, and I would be speaking about UKMLA, in other words, United Kingdom Medical License Assessment. Now, for those of us who have been following the Plab journey and are familiar with the system, we must at some point have come across the concept of UKMLA, and that's basically an examination that is coming to replace the Plab examination. Now, a lot of this has been talked about the Plab examination, and now people are speaking about the UKMLA. And once you mention the UKMLA, a lot of things come into the people's mind. Majorly, people start thinking that this could be something that is similar to the United States Medical License Assessment Examination, that's the UMSLE, and that gives a lot of people anxiety and concern that if I'm not able to complete my Plab journey before the introduction of UKMLA, then how do I proceed? This might be a very difficult exam, probably similar to the UMSLE journey, and then it may make it really tough for me to be able to complete the journey. So in this presentation, these are a few things that I would like to answer as we proceed. It's not going to be a very long presentation. Hopefully, if I'm able to answer some of the questions on the screen, then the objectives of the presentation has been largely achieved. We would talk about why UKMLA, and then how largely does it differ from the Plab examination, and how would it affect IMG? Now, IMG basically means immigrating medical graduates, and it's a very common term that we use around here to depict people who moved from different countries after training as medical doctors or healthcare practitioners to work in the UK. So, as opposed to the students that have graduated in the UK and have undergone their training in the UK. So IMGs, how much would this change affect us? And also talked about slightly how much would it cost? Would the cost be largely variable or different from what we normally are expecting or anticipating in terms of the Plab? And then when will it be implemented? These are a few questions that must have been going through our minds, and hopefully we should be able to answer that. So like I mentioned earlier, it's basically the United Kingdom Medical Licensing Assessment, and it's an assessment that is aimed at replacing the Plab assessment that we're normally familiar with. And the GMC, as we all know, is responsible for setting up standards for medical education in the United Kingdom, and as well as learning. And it largely does that for not just the students that are moving from other countries, it does that for the students that are graduating from medical schools in the UK. And the general aim is to ensure safe practice as a doctor in the UK, and to be able to equip you, to be able to be watchful of what you do, and at least ensure that you are a safe person to get into the medical register in the United Kingdom. So it largely tries, the UKMLA is an assessment that would largely try to assess the knowledge, skills, and behaviors of the doctors that are moving from other countries, as well as the doctors that would be graduating from the United Kingdom medical schools. So to answer one of the burning questions, that is, why is the GMC introducing a different examination whilst they have the Plab system and people are very used to it? Why should they be a UKMLA? What's the reason? Is it just to frustrate the life of the people, or the people moving from other part of the world, or are there other reasons? And to demystify this idea, the GMC has put forward an explanation about the reason, and it largely is to sort of remove the barrier that exists, or rather to create a common ground for both immigrating medical graduates and the United Kingdom students who are graduating from medical school, in terms of getting assessed and getting registered in the medical register in the UK. Now, I spoke earlier about the foundation training in the UK, which basically the students pass through and then get registered. And then for us, we pass through the Plab journey. And sometimes doesn't happen all the time, but then a curious patient sometimes may ask, you have trained elsewhere. He might be a bit, well, why are you practicing in the UK whilst you've been trained elsewhere? And I've been asked that by a patient once, that I've trained elsewhere, and how is the training there? And does it give me the necessary things to be able to practice in the UK? And my response to the patient was that, oh, well, if it's not comfortable for me to see him, I can get him another doctor. But I trust my skills, and I believe in the system that trained me to what I become now. But I think in some way, the GMC is trying to remove some of those things that might go through the minds of certain people that you've trained in different countries, and then you all come together and you practice together, because the UK system gives you that opportunity. And then to remove that barrier, it creates the UKMLA, and then it means that all the students that are graduating from the UK would have to write this examination and pass through it before they can get registered into the GMC as medical practitioners. And of course, we that are migrating from different countries would also have to go through the similar examination. So it's just to give us an idea. And the expected time for the commencement of the UKMLA, it would be for graduating medical student in the UK, the academic year of 2024 to 2025 and onwards. And there are some speculations that it might be started a bit earlier for the IMGs and a bit later for the candidates that are graduating from the United Kingdom. But I think largely this covers the period, because this is the information that is being stated on the GMC website, which I would encourage you all to go through at some point to be able to get all the latest information. So the academic year of 2024, that is next year, and then onwards, if you are planning to start your Plab journey, or if you are midway into the Plab journey, you might experience this transition. And for the GMC will announce the exact date that this change would be implemented. So it's not been stated at the moment, but hopefully they've given us an idea that it's going to be implemented in that particular time. And then hopefully we would wait for the GMC to give a precise time that it would start, it would kickstart the UKMLA. Now, who is eligible to register and write the UKMA or MLA? That's the medical license and assessment examination. Now, we have the English requirement, which has been spoken by some of the previous presenters, and the primary medical qualification, and a lot of these things have been talked about by the previous presenters, so I'm not going to dwell much. It doesn't differ largely from what's been done for the Plab journey. And then the booking confirmation, which hopefully would be done by whoever is interested in registering for the system. Regarding the cost, there's been a lot of talks that it is likely to be more expensive than the Plab examination, but that's not been confirmed by the GMC. So the GMC is particularly silent about this aspect, and it says that it would be announced hopefully in the near future. And for those of us who think we might have to go through this particular assessment, then it might be worth it to stay in touch with the GMC website and then get all the information from there. And hopefully they would state that. So how is the medical license assessment structured, and how would it differ from the Plab examination? Now, it is in two different parts, and if we look at it keenly, it looks largely like the Plab Part 1 and Plab Part 2, and this is one of the good news that I would like to share with everyone today, that based on the information I'm able to obtain, I clearly see that there's no significant discrepancy between the Plab examination and the UKMLA examination. They've stated some names for the different parts. The first part, or Part A, is the Applied Knowledge Test, or the AKT, and the second part is the Clinical and Professional Skills Assessment, that's the CPSA. Now, these two different parts, in some way you could look at it as the AKT is largely similar to the Plab Part 1 exams, and the CPSA would largely be similar to the Plab Part 2. And that's what the GMC website states as well. So for those of us who are very concerned that it might largely change, and then it may end up looking like the UMSLE exams, which would be very complicated, and then how do I go about the preparation and all of that? It is certainly, and as the GMC states, it would largely be similar to the Plab examination, and it has basically two parts. And the AKT, like I've stated, is largely similar to the Plab Part 1. So it would involve questions that are multiple choice, and it would test your medical knowledge, and it would test you in terms of different scenarios. Now, this is largely similar to what we see in the Plab Part 1 examination, and it is expected to run 4 times in a year, which is not different from what we normally know as regarding the Plab Part 1 exams. And for that's basically for the IMGs. Now, for the UK graduates, they would definitely have to take it in the end of their medical school education, and to be able to get registered. And they would certainly have to pass it. If they are not successful for it, then it means that they've not completed their degree as medical graduates. So all the students that are graduating from the UK would have to go through it. And then for the IMGs, you get an additional opportunity, which is largely similar to the Plab Part 1, of writing it at 4 different times in a year. And it can be registered at different locations, just like the Plab Part 1. So you don't have to travel to a specific location, perhaps in the UK, to be able to write this examination. It would be probably in the same countries that we normally register in Plab Part 1. That's where we can also register for the AKT. The CPSA, as the GMC states, would be an OSCE exams, which is basically Plab 2. I mean, just put aside the fancy name, it is just basically Plab Part 2 examination, which has been just given a special name, and then it becomes the UKMLA. It's expected to run in Manchester, and that would be the Clinical Assessment Center for the GMC, which is where currently the Plab Part 2 examination takes place. And it would involve a lot of scenarios, which would largely be similar to those that we face normally in Plab Part 2, involving the scenarios in which you have simulators as patients. You'd have video call stations in which you assess patients remotely and address their concerns, and you get to do telephone stations as well, which is largely what we see with the Plab Part 2 examination that is being run currently. And so basically, these 2 parts are largely similar to the Plab exams. And in terms of preparation, at this point, we should understand that it's not going to change largely from what we normally do for the Plab examinations. However, the GMC states that it would be replacing the Plab blueprint with the MLA content map. For those of us who are not familiar with the Plab blueprint, it's basically a document that has nearly all the information that you need to pass the Plab examination. It's not every student or every candidate that go through it, and in terms of preparation for the Plab exams, I personally used it because I realized that it gives me a summary of all the things that I need to know to be able to pass successfully the Plab examination, especially the Part 1. And of course, it has information regarding the Part 2 as well. And you can use it together with other preparation materials just to correlate, but largely it gives you an idea about how to prepare for the examination. And the GMC said that it would be replacing it with the MLA content map. And the MLA content map would largely be similar to the Plab blueprint. It's not going to have much difference. I've looked through some of the contents in it, and it doesn't look much different from the Plab blueprint that we normally have existing at the moment. And I think the MLA content map is existing also at the moment. So if you're interested, you can check the GMC website, and you can be able to download it and have a look at it. It can give you a general overview of the Plab examination and the different parts in terms of topics, neurology, for example, the anatomy sections, and the medicine aspect. It gives you all the topics and bits of information about things that you can read further on and then be able to prepare appropriately for the exams. And the MLA map introduction should generally not have significant impact on your exam preparation. If you're already into the Plab journey and you've started preparing for the exams, or you've done certain part of the exams, then you shouldn't be terrified by the coming up or the creation of the MLA content map. Rather, just keep up with your preparation, and you would hopefully be successful. As the GMC states, it shouldn't have significant impact on your preparation. Now, a few important things to note, which I believe this slide is probably the most important slide regarding the MLA, because a lot of people have been asking questions about the transitioning period. Some of us have started the Plab journey, have written some of the examination, but have not been able to complete all of it for one reason or the other. And how would it affect you if you've already started the journey and then the UK introduces the MLA? So basically, the MLA would be mandatory for registration, as we've stated, and it is possible to receive this examination. The allowed number of receipts as stated by the GMC website is 4 times, and if you've already started the Plab journey and you've completed successfully the Plab, both parts of the Plabs, then you probably have no business or no reason to worry about the introduction of MLA, because you can proceed with your registration. That's the guide has been provided by some of the earlier presenters, and it shouldn't be a problem for you. You're expected to register after completing the Plab journey within 2 years. Otherwise, you have to state to the GMC why you can't register, and hopefully, or rather register and then delay, suspend your registration, as the previous presenters have stated. Now, for those of us who have completed the Plab 1 examination and would like to complete this journey, however, they've introduced the MLA, then in that case, you don't have to take the Plab 2, you would take the CPSA, which is largely similar to the Plab 2 examination. So it would replace, you would have to do it as opposed to the Plab 2 exams, and it's expected to be done within 2 years of completing the Plab Part 1 examination. Otherwise, you may have to relinquish or run the risk of losing the Plab Part 1 that you've written in the past. And if one has previously attempted the Plab Part 2 examination and was unsuccessful, I pray that we all would be successful in our first attempt and we don't have to go through this experience more than once. But if for some reason that it's been destined that you're not able to complete it within a single trial and they've introduced the MLA exams, then you will be taking the CPSA. And the number of attempts has not been concluded at the moment. And by this, that if you have attempted unsuccessfully the Plab 2 examination, say twice, and you've not been able to make it, you have a chance to go for the CPSA for you to be able to get registered. And the GMC in the future would tell us how many attempts you need to make for Plab 2 that you can't register for the CPSA, and we're also waiting for them to give us that information. And the final important information bit is regarding those that have previously attempted the Plab Part 1 and have been unsuccessful. In that case, then they would have to take the AKT, and all their previous attempts regarding Plab 1 do count, as most of us are aware that there are limited number of times you can attempt the Plab Part 1 examination and be expected to be successful in it. And I really, really hope that none of us would have to go through all of this experience. But just to answer the questions, should they be running through our minds as we read through or come across these transitions and changes, and it's important to answer all the questions. And the GMC was able to put forward all of this for us to have an idea. And so in conclusion, basically, the MLA is an exam that's expected to replace the Plab, and it would be kickstarted in next year. And if you are in your journey, it might be that you experience this at some point. And it's in some ways, the idea is to unify registration assessment for both UK graduates as well as the IMG. So it's not a very terrible or evil thing that's been designed by the GMC, as some people have been speculating to frustrate the lives of IMGs or people moving to the UK. Rather, there are some good intention behind the whole thing. And one thing that you learn as you start your journey or working in the UK is that they really have a largely functioning system that it doesn't try to cheat people in some ways. It tries to give, it's constantly trying to be considerate and look into the situations of different people, as we can largely verify from the experiences of Plab. I remember some years back when COVID came and there was a lot of challenges with booking Plab examination. People kept sending emails to GMC to let them know that there's been challenges. I mean, we're not able to book, and there's a huge backlog in registration, and that's been very, very annoying for a lot of people. And after that has been put forward, the GMC was considerate. It looked at all the emails that it received in masses and tried to create additional booking platforms and additional months that were previously not being used for the exams. It brought them and gave us an opportunity to be able to register. And that is one thing that I would really love to share with all of you, that the UK system largely tries to give everyone an opportunity. And it's a really great thing, especially sometimes when you look at where we all come from. The MLA is largely not expected to differ from the Plab examination. And even after its introduction, you would still have all the alternative means to register with the GMC. And some of these pathways would be addressed by the subsequent presentations that we would have in the next session. That would be tomorrow, hopefully by some of our colleagues. And I would really encourage all of us that have stayed patiently to listen to this session today to be part of tomorrow's session as well, to be able to largely benefit from the experiences and knowledge that will be shared by subsequent presenters. So thank you all for listening. And if you have questions regarding the MLA or any other thing, you should put it on the chat box, and hopefully some of us would be able to address the questions as we proceed. This largely brings us to the end, and it would be a question and answer session, and some of our colleagues would chip in to give information or answer some of the questions that have been put in the chat box. Thank you very much once again. And the final bit is the reference sections, which is basically the GMC website. So if you've registered with them, largely what I've said, what I've talked about, you should be able to find all that information on the GMC website, and should be able to educate yourself. Thank you. And I would stop sharing my screen, and hopefully we can have a look at the questions and be able to give answers to them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alhassan. Can I take some of the questions now?
Absolutely, Dr. Mustapha, you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you all for your patience throughout the presentation. I know it's been a very lengthy one, but I'll be as swift as possible answering some of these questions. The first question I noted in the chat was the lifespan of the IELTS as written by the person who posted the question. I believe Dr. Adamu talked about this, but I'll just quickly go through it. The IELTS exam is supposed to last for 2 years from when you take the exam, both the IELTS and the OET exams. The validity period is for 2 years. But during the COVID era, GMC made some adjustments, like Dr. Alhassan rightly pointed out. They are very considerate people. So they made some adjustments just to let you book and take your exams. So it's 3 years. So this is how the rule comes. When you take your IELTS or OET exams, say you take the exams in 2022, and within that period, you've taken your Plab 1 exams. And after taking your Plab 1 exams, you're due for your Plab 2 exams. At the time when you're about to take your Plab 2 exams, your English exam should not be older or later than 2 years from the day you took the exams, for 2 years. So if you've taken your Plab 2 exams within that two-year period, your English exams is very valid for you to do your GMC registration. However, if based on circumstances, you weren't able to take your exams after 2 years, you will have to repeat the English test, be it IELTS or the OET. That's for the validity, the lifespan, as it says. Then the second question is the questioner said, Plab keys before Plabable, which would you advise? Basically, to be honest with you, I started with Plab keys. I made notes, which I was able to make a PDF copy of my notes, which I have shared with some people. Going through the Plab keys makes it really easier for you to understand the scope of the Plabable, because it's more like a repetition of what you have learned. And there's this introduction of what is known as the Plab gems. It's got a lot of images and illustrations that enable you to actually grasp most of the concept of the exams. So I would advise going with the Plab keys, then the Plabable at the same time after you must have gone through the Plab keys. I hope that answers your question. Then the Plab 1 payment. Given looking at the situation we have at the moment, it is very difficult to actually book exams using a Nigerian card if you're currently in Nigeria because of the foreign currency restriction. You can't make payments more than $20, I believe. So the best thing to do is to get someone who is in the UK or any other part of the world who has got a different card, deposits the money into the account, and you can use the card for payment. Alternatively, we have other virtual cards you can use, like the floataways, but I don't know if it's still working. So the problem is you have to go through the parallel markets to get your exchange rate. So, like the speaker said, it's not very possible to get a bank rate using all these other platforms where you can actually use for your payments. And the price for the Plab 1 exams is £249 from the last payment I am made aware of. I don't know if it's changed now, £249. Why for the OET, the price is 580 Australian dollars, which is equivalent to around £350 or whereabout. Then the last one is joining the Plab group. You don't necessarily have to join a specific Plab group which I have created, but you can just get a cohort among yourself, say it 4 or 5 people. Don't make it very crowded, because a rowdy group doesn't yield a significant result. Just 4 or 5 people, do discussions among yourself and go through the past questions, and I believe you should be up and dry with that. Then the last one is Dr. Alhassan talked about the Key Points Academy, which I was about to shed more light on. That's by the way. And the next one, the question I noted here is, which I must actually let each and every one of us know. The GMC and the UK system in general believe you need to take these exams because they need to test your communication skills. The whole concept of the Plab exams is it is a linguistic exams. It is a communication-based exams. Like Dr. Adamu rightly said, you may have these stuffs, you know these things, but when you get to a station, you can't communicate well with the patient, and then they begin to wonder if this person happens to work in the UK, because the native speakers are very fast speakers. They are very fast. If you're working in the UK, can you communicate well with a patient to actually treat the conditions they are coming with? So that is the concern. So that is, by the way, I have actually gone through the questions I noted, and I believe if there's any other questions, the subsequent speakers can actually take them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mustapha. You've touched quite a lot of questions, and that is nice. I'd just like to make a comment regarding the barter by Flutterwave. That used to be a platform to make international transaction, and it gives you an exchange rate that's largely similar to the black market exchange rate. The last time I tried using it, that was a couple of years ago, and I realized that it's not been working, and they've had some technical challenges that they are trying to sort out. So may not be a very reliable thing to do. And especially if you're trying to book for the Plab examination, you know that it's a very tight sport. You get limited amount of time, and there are a lot of people that are trying to book at the same time. So the server gets really, really tough. I mean, it gets really slow in terms of getting the booking ready. So one of the things that we did then is to try to network or connect with people who are staying in the UK and they've got access to a UK bank card that they can make the payment for you. And they've got probably a better network that can help you in getting registered. So that is a very viable option that I would encourage most of us to explore. If you need to register for an examination or any other things, you can try to find someone that you know there, and then hopefully someone might be able to help you get registered. I mean, largely in the entire journey is trying to uplift each other and give back to our community where we come from as much as we can. And in terms of this, well, it's a bit of a digression from what we've been talking about, but I would largely like to state that some people think that whenever you move from Nigeria to the UK, it's termed as an escape, like you're leaving the system, you're leaving a huge vacuum at home, and then you are not doing anything to benefit back home. And I think that's largely not true in my own opinion, and a lot of people would believe or would rather agree with me that you do a lot of things, you make a lot of changes when you are away from, when you're in a system that really works and gives you an opportunity. But then it doesn't mean that if you're interested in the journey, it all comes down to our personal circumstances and interests. And if you really want to pursue this journey, then it's something worthy of doing. And from personal experience, I really encourage as much people as possible to explore the options. The other thing I would like to talk about is regarding, I've seen a question about family visa and nurses registration. I personally am not very experienced in the pathway for nurses to register. I know that they normally take the English examination. I've seen a lot of them preparing for that back in Nigeria, and after getting the English test, and then it's relatively easy for them to get registered into the GMC. But they don't have to pass through a lot of examination, like I learned from some of the nurses I've worked with in the past. And for family visa, basically, if you move into the UK, it's expected that you can come along with your family or dependents. If you've got children, if you've got a wife, those are basically the dependents that you can move with. It's not usually it's not feasible for you to move with, for example, parents or your sisters or brothers. They may be able to visit you using a visitor's visa if you can invite them, and that can make the application for the visa relatively easier. But you can't keep them along with you to stay in the UK. But for your dependents, that's the family visa or spousal visa, you can be able to bring them along with you. And especially if the job you secure in the UK provides maintenance fee for you, it makes it really easier, and you should be able to move with your family to the UK and stay with them. And I hope that answers the question. Application for the visa can be done both in Nigeria and outside Nigeria. You can move and then later be joined by your family. Alternatively, you can move together, as some of us have done in the past. They move together with their family and all at once start working in the UK and then get a new home for themselves. So it all depends on personal circumstance and situations. And if you have questions regarding that, you can get all the answers on the UK immigration website. It states clearly about skilled worker visa and people who are in the medical field moving to the UK to work. So I would encourage you, if you have questions regarding that, to explore the website. It gives a lot of information about that. Someone has asked a question about accommodation options. I really don't understand whether he means accommodation after moving to the UK or during the Plab journey. If you're coming on a visitor's visa to write the Plab exams, the accommodation, I think one of the previous presenters has talked about it, and it's basically there are a lot of options depending on how financially buoyant you are. If you're I've seen people who've stayed in 5-star hotels. They've got a lot of money back in Nigeria, and they're able to afford very, very expensive hotels, and they're able to enjoy the period of their stay. But then if you're coming from a system in which you're struggling to get, I mean, I know that it's really hard, but the exchange rate has been very awful, and the currency gap is very significant. And to be able to raise the amount of money in pounds equivalents to sort out all the things that you need to do here in the UK, it may be a bit difficult. But one thing I remembered is regarding the visa application, you can be very reasonable and give the necessary information about what you need to, just to be able to prove that you can provide the funds to support yourself throughout the journey of staying in the UK for the exams and getting back home. So if you're able to prove that to the, in terms of application for the, visa, then that's important, especially in terms of getting a proof that you are able to afford a hotel. A lot of people put the receipt for their hotel booking, and in the website, thehotels.com, it gives you an opportunity to see hotels that you can book a period of stay in which you don't have to pay the money. So you get the booking, and then you get proof of booking, and then you can use that for visa application. And then you don't really have to stay in that, because you can always cancel the registration, and you don't have to pay an extra fee regarding getting the booking cancelled for you. Personally, I used that when I was applying for visa, because I was not using a sponsor. I self-sponsored myself, and for that reason, I have to be very cautious in terms of my spendings and to be able to prove that I can support myself. I use a hotel booking that gives me an opportunity to cancel my registrations. Before I get to the UK, I cancel that particular booking, and then I get myself a different accommodation. There are a lot of places now that exist in Manchester. That's where the GMC exam part 2 is held on a yearly basis. And if you are interested, there are a lot of people that provide accommodation for that are relatively cheap as compared with expensive hotels. You can go in groups and then be able to rent. Some people even share part of their apartment that you can stay there and do the exams, and hopefully after the examination move out, and then they give a reasonable price that you might be able to negotiate as well. So I would encourage all of you to try and explore all those options. Some of them you can get them on the Facebook pages. You can type just in the comments in the groups for people to give you an idea about accommodation. I've known a few people who can be able to support you. And then alternatively, if you have a friend that is staying and is willing to accommodate you, if he has that capacity, is another option to explore. People have used that, and that has been helpful for them. So it's all about preparation, getting your funds ready, and putting everything well organized so that you'll be able to book everything and not be stranded and not get rejected. Your visa application may not be precisely a reflection of how you stay in the UK. I mean, nobody would ask you after moving to the UK whether you are eating gari or you are eating shinkafa, or whatever it is. Just be able to move there and then prove to the ICOs in terms of application that, ECOs, that you are able to support yourself in the UK. And when you move there, doesn't really matter. I mean, if you'll be fasting for the entire period, if that suits you, then that is entirely up to you. To be able to support yourself down here. But regardless, provided that you've been preparing, it shouldn't be something very difficult to sort out and in the entire Plab journey. And I can't see much question. Oh, some people have asked a few questions, and sort of seems like all the other presenters are leaving the task to me to keep talking. We've got another person asking about you must clear your Plab 1 and 2 and also register for medical license within the particular 2 years period. Yeah, so what I know is there is a validity for Plab Part 1 exams in terms of the number of attempts. I think it's 3 years after passing Plab 1 that you're expected to attempt the Plab Part 2 examination. And after passing the Plab Part 2 examination, you're expected to register within 2 years and hopefully be able to get a job in the UK. And if for any reason you think you have to suspend your registration and sort out some personal things, not necessarily in the UK, that is feasible and possible. All you have to do is to notify GMC, and some of the previous presenters have talked about how you can suspend your registration whilst you're sorting out certain things before. But nothing says that everything has to be done within 2 years. I mean, some people have had more than 2 years period for a lot of reason to be able to complete their journey, and it all depends largely on our personal circumstances. I've seen people who've sorted out everything within 6-7 months, and then some people who have spent years trying to get everything sorted out. So you look at your personal circumstances, situation, and then see how feasible you can do it. But then keep in mind that they are validity to the different sections of the examinations. That's the Plab part 1. You have at least about 3 years to be able to complete that journey, and then attempt the Plab part 2 and pass it successfully, hopefully. And I really pray that we don't have to go through the struggle of either rewriting the exams or not being able to successfully complete the examination in the first attempt. Some of us would have to do it. Unfortunately, a lot of people have to, and it's not a reason to give up in the entire journey if you're not able to complete it. I've seen people who have done different part of the examination multiple times just to be able to, and the key has always been never to give up, and then give it your best shot. If you're not able to make it in the first time, put extra strength and go for it again, and hopefully you might be able to hit it really hard and get registered in subsequent attempts. And but it's something really feasible to do it in a single attempt. Get all the different sections of the examination, from the English to the Plab part 1, Plab part 2, all in a single go. I've seen people who've done it so it's not something really impossible. It's all about planning and looking at your personal situation and personal circumstances, and hopefully you should be able to be here with us in the near future. I think I've answered largely most of the questions. Dr. Mustapha, he's muted his mic, and we've got a question about
Salam Alaykum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Ala Nura, bismillah, tafaddal.
Likita kai kokari. Gaskiya Allah ya
No.
kaka.
Amin ya rabbil alamin.
Akwai last question din da aka yi wanda Dr. Habib Ibrahim yayi da yace, he said, because I'm not able to see all the questions, so he said, sorry, I don't know if I missed the part about medical practice in the United Kingdom, or you didn't include it in the presentation. A lot of people have been saying that foreigners have been finding it difficult to cope with working conditions. I don't know. That's a question that I've seen. I think I probably just picked interest in that because it's what I can say. So, Rayuwa tana da changes. I mean, I would be putting Hausa in it. I'm sorry if there's non-Hausa speakers. So whatever situation you happen to find yourself, the best way to survive in that situation is to learn from that situation. So you see the people that are working, and then you learn from them. That's one. Secondly, is that every trust has its own policies. In our trust, most times when you start, you get 1 month shadowing period. That 1 month, the role of that 1 month is for you to see how things are done and do it the way they are done. They say that when you are in Rome, you have to do how Romans do. So there's a problem, because some people, I have seen people that have had some experiences. I personally had some experiences which were not. So when you start working, and then sometimes you think that, oh, this is the way I want this to do, or this is where I think this should have been done, or something, and then it can run you into problem. So for everything you do to survive in the NHS, look, NHS magabaki ɗayanta ba wai maganar wai ƙwaƙwalwa bace. It has nothing to do with intelligence or smartness. And you're not here in the NHS to work because you want to be smart, or you're here to work in the system. So you are just a variable in the equation, which is the system. if something were to happen, you can always be an eliminated variable. But if you can play well in that equation, Kokai mistakes, there wouldn't be a problem. It's not that the British people don't do mistakes. Everybody does mistakes. Every single person does mistake. The most important thing is that you don't do the mistakes that are outside the box. You don't do things very, very difficult, very, very far, and you don't do things beyond your capacity. Kada ka yadda kai wani abin da ba a cikin job description ɗinka ba. Kada ka yadda kai wani abin da ya fi ƙarfin skills ɗinka. Kada ka yi abin da kuma idan aka tambaye ka me yasa ka yi baka da explanation da yasa ka yi shi. Sannan preferably idan za ka yi abu ya kasance ka samu approval from wanda yake above you, especially if you're working at a quite junior level. There is something. If you inform wanda yake na sama ga kai, ka ce mishi there's a problem kaza, kuma kai mishi ka gaya mishi, duk inda aka je baka da matsala, because you have already informed who is above you. So you get protected. So it is not difficult to survive in the NHS. I think from my little experience of being in NHS, probably it's easier to work in the NHS than to work in other systems I have worked. Problem is just that it has so much paperwork, so look at it that you'll not be happy with. I think this would be the pain. This is my pain that I have to do a lot. It's a very, very big pain when you have to do paperwork, you have to do letters, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to call this one, you have to do that, that's more of the pain. Amma, anybody can work in the NHS and survive. Okay, bari ga muku gaskiya. To wani malamin mace kai ko biri ka sa shi cikin NHS zai yi aiki. All he needs is just tell him to do this and he does it. So kada wani ya damu. If he wants to work in the NHS, should not be worried about anything. In this, according to the rules, he's going to live happily. If he does mistake around, people will be there because everybody does mistakes. And if you have a problem, always try to speak to your supervisor, and that's it. Amma ba wani matsala bane. Kai hawa abinda ba ka iya ba abinda ba mu iya. Muna Najeriya alaji. Muna muka sha mulkin babu discipline officer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Noura, for that insightful advice and an insight and a tester to how the life in the NHS is. For some of us who may not know, Dr. Noura is one of our elder brothers here, and he's very experienced in working in the NHS. He's been here before a lot of us and has been very helpful for many of us in the journey to transition into working in the NHS. And he is someone who I would encourage you to, if you can, get an access to. If you have any challenges, a lot of us are here to provide support for you, but then he can be like, if you look at it in terms of hierarchy, he's like the consultant in the team who can be very supportive in terms of if things get really difficult for all of us. And he's been very helpful for everyone. We still have a couple of minutes before the meeting ends. We're closing by 10 p.m. and I've seen a few more questions coming in. Someone asking, you'll notice that on the timeline that your IELTS validity covers the period of your registration. Basically, what I can say about this is that the IELTS examination is largely required for GMC registration, and the moment you get registered, nobody really care about whether you've got an English test that is valid or not valid. So it's important to streamline your entire journey to get the registration before your English test expires. Sometimes some people have had this challenge, especially following the advent of COVID. And when COVID came, there were artificially created gaps that emerged in terms of people getting registered or people getting all the necessary things to start their life in the UK. And that gap that has been created has made a lot of people have challenges because they've got an IELTS or an OET that's expiring, and then they've not been able to get a booking slot to write their Plab 2. And at some point, a lot of people had challenges, not because they personally met the huge gap, but rather the system or the situation made it for them not to be able to complete their journey. And the GMC had a lot of complaints and tried to increase the validity of IELTS exams, I think from 2 years to 3 years until people get registered. I'm not sure how it is at the moment, whether they've reverted back to the original 2 years expiry expiration validity for the IELTS examination. But if that's is the case, then you really just have to try to struggle to complete your journey before your exam expires. If otherwise it expires, it doesn't mean you can't proceed, but they would require you to write another English exams before you can get registered with the GMC. In Plab Part 2, nobody asks whether you've got a valid IELTS or you don't have. Provided that you've completed your Plab Part 1 successfully, you're going to be able to write your Plab Part 2 exams. But if you come to GMC registration, they certainly would need a valid English test. And if you don't have a valid IELTS at that moment, then you might have to take another one to be able to register. And after the registration, then nobody really cares about whether you've had an IELTS or an OET. That would be essentially about work, and provided that you're GMC registered, you would successfully be able to get a job and hopefully start working in the NHS. So that's a little that I can say about this question regarding the validity. I think we are at the exact time that is allotted for this meeting, and if there are not really important questions, I would urge all of us to attend the next session tomorrow, and hopefully you would reap the benefits of experienced speakers who would be with us and be able to give us a lot of things. And thank you all for staying patiently with us, and we will be ending the meeting at this moment, and you can pick some of our emails. If we're not able to put it at the moment, some of us would provide it hopefully later in the chat box tomorrow, so that if you have any further questions that would personally like to contact one of us, you can email that to ask about the journey, and we should try as much as possible to make it largely about the Plab journey and how to excel. It shouldn't be emailing me to ask if I can support you with money to do some personal stuff. I mean, that is, I'm just kidding, by the way. So thank you very much. I'll be turning on the camera, and also we would be concluding the meeting at this point. Thank you all.
Thank you all جماعة من gode سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you very much.